Okay. Are you ready for the interview?
I am ready. I hope I did enough research because, like, I tried my best
That's
to
okay.
do.
Yeah. I meant to do some more research so I could also help with that as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
yeah.
it just somehow is already the third. So,
Yeah, I
but
know. Yep.
that's okay.
Mhm.
We're just going to kind of go over like really like a basic introduction into clay materials for people that don't know anything with regards to pottery or ceramics. Um that way like they can have that base and kind of how I want to do the podcast for the start of it anyway is I actually want to rotate into different categories. So the first category that we'll go into is like basic art materials, just understanding what they are and what they do and how they work. And then it will rotate on like a monthly basis. So for this month, we're going into clay and potentially watercolors slash art materials in the industrial age because I literally just finished doing that research project. And
Right.
then for like next month, I want to cover like two famous artists and their works and what they used within their works, like quite often. After that, it will be like famous artworks that we understand or like that we as a society are like, whoa, this is cool. But like, what about the materials behind it? What was used specifically in this? Where was that? Like, where did that come from? And why is that important for this painting? Not just like technique wise, but specifically because of the materials that was used. And then I think the last category I want to go into is like time periods and doing like an overall overview of different types of art history periods, such as like Rococo, Baroque, or
Mm-hmm.
even like the more modern art. Because I feel like a lot of people, well, at least I have friends that really hate on modern art. And I'm like, no,
I
but you don't understand though. So there's
I
definitely, yeah.
can't I can't do the Renaissance art. Even though I know that it's like basically the most like important since like because it's the Renaissance,
Yeah.
like Rococo and like all that. I'm just like, like for for art history, ancient art, my favorite. Renaissance, I know it, but like I'd rather just skip to modern. Do you know what I mean? And I think that what makes modern fun is because of that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like because of people not understanding and liking, but also understanding that art is subjective. So it's like keeping that open mind frame. Like I can't stand ready-mades. I want to kill everybody when we talk about ready-mades. But like
Yeah.
who am I? I'm not in a museum or nothing. You know what I mean? Like who am I? So so yeah, like I can understand where people are just like, you know? But
Yeah. No, there's definitely some like art pieces where like I like there's some art pieces where I do agree with like some people on when it comes to like modern art, they're like, of course, like people just feel like it's a red dot on a canvas or something. Um, but then
mm,
there's other times where I look at different modern art and it's like you have to go in depth with how the art was made slash what that symbolizes for you to truly grasp why
mm,
it's so
mhm.
important. Um, and I
I mean,
have
that's
other
a whole
examples, but
conversation, you know what I mean? That's a whole
yeah,
conversation and like, okay, so you call this red dot art, right? And like what the thinking behind it, whatever it is or whatever, is it worth $20,000?
yeah,
I don't know. You know
that's
what I
like
mean?
completely different. Yeah,
Like now did we source this red from like one plant in the whatever desert that you had to like go on a mile hike journey to like figure and like hallucinate on stuff to just find this one plant to then grind it up and make a dot? Okay. Like that might warrant a $20,000 thing. Or did you go to
yeah.
Michael's and get like, you know, an acrylic bold tube of whatever and just be like, I feel passionately about this. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it is, it's
Oh,
subjective. We have to, it's very, that's a good conversation to have for sure.
it's a great conversation. So that would be like that's one of the things that I want to have like discussions over in the future within the podcast for that.
Oh, they made a little clay
Hey!
pot.
That's so
Tiny clay
cute.
pot. I know, I made a whole bunch of these for my nail techs, and I dropped them off before Christmas.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, did they get back to you on that? Like,
Oh, yeah, they love them.
oh, that's
Yeah,
so
they love them.
good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I love that so
Alright,
much.
cool. I have my notes on my computer, so if it looks like I'm reading, I am.
That's okay. Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll just get right into it. Hello, welcome to the Art History of Materials podcast. I am your host, Tira. I'm an eco artisan in Wichita, Kansas, and we're going to be going over the history of clay today, as well as kind of like the purpose and materials for it. I have Eva, who is joining us today. And yeah, Eva, would you like to share some information about yourself that like our friends can learn about you?
Hello, my name's Eva Hozinez. I am a professional potter and a studio manager at my local art center in Wayne, PA. And yeah, so I actually started out as a painter, and then as I went through college and everything, I started in ceramics only because it satisfied kind of like a textile uh, need that I had more than just sitting in front of a painting. So when I started with ceramics, I really started getting into the chemistry of everything, and building and going through all that. So eventually I made it my actual profession to be a manager and to do all like the chemical stuff, the firings, and I also teach two advanced classes.
Hell
So
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
I was gonna say you recently so you had a show recently as well. Because we had some calls where we were going over your cheeseburgers.
But yeah, I actually have one.
Yeah, you have
Um
one? Okay.
Yeah, I this is a it's a bisque piece. So this is it hasn't been completely fired yet, so it looks very pastel-y.
Yeah, it's like the
Um
saturation's turned down.
Down, way down, yeah.
Yeah.
And then eventually it's gonna and then eventually it's gonna fire. It's gonna be extremely bright and vibrant.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to be able to work where I work. We have a very there's a lot of pottery places popping up now. Like everybody's into pottery. I'm not saying it's like new, but it's definitely uh taking off a little bit more around my area at least.
Oh,
And
man.
so there's a bunch of art centers around here. So but with the one that I work at, we're very fortunate to have as many luxuries coming from a community center. So it's really cool to be able to work there.
Hell yeah. I'll say I'll so I'll link the information there too, but I think you also had your cheeseburgers on your Instagram as well as like all of your other ceramic pieces that you're working on. So,
Yes, I have, well, the cheeseburger started when I was in college. I don't know. I honestly have no idea why. I actually have no idea. But that was my senior thesis to do a whole bunch of cheeseburgers and different ceramic processes. So like different glazing, different like clay bodies and stuff. So I kind of used the cheeseburger subject to kind of be I guess the stable like part of my experiments, you know what I mean? So that was
yeah.
the form that they took. I'm not really sure. And now it's like one of those, every Christmas and birthday, whatever cheeseburger things that anyone found, it all comes to me.
I love that so much. So you're just collecting cheeseburgers and you're like, this is my life.
Yep, that's it.
I love that so much. Yeah, well let's get into it. So people who don't understand what clay bodies are or what glazes are or what bisquing is, um going to like the base of the material itself, what is clay? Like for example, I've dealt with clay like when I go to the lake with my family and I'm like walking in the water and I can feel the texture change into this like smooth texture where like as my rambunctious siblings and I we'd like to like throw mud at each other. um, in this type of setting. But in terms of like utilizing clay in the studio, what is that? What does that look like?
So so when you're talking about clay, like when you're out in the world, it's naturally occurring clay. It's not made and it's not formulated. Like we use a lot of people that are in the studio setting, we use commercial clay made by clay companies that incorporate different ingredients in there, and it makes a clay body that has been tested to melt at a certain temperature, right? But if we're looking at naturally occurring clay, and you're talking like, you're going out on lakes or you're going to, different areas, what happens? Let's say we're on a hill, all right, in the forest somewhere, and there's a lake down, or there's a stream down here, and water, when it comes from like rain and everything, it will come down this hill, and everything comes down this hill into, your streams. Well, up top, you could possibly find clay, but as you go down, that water is taking all the smallest and smallest of sediments, all of the feldspar sediments, all these sediments that are like 0.00002, of like a milli thing. And so and it's just small, that's what I mean. But
Yeah.
as you go down there, as you go down, and all that runoff is kind of compacted, all of that gets filtered down, and when you dig, or you put you put your feet in it, or whatever, you're digging through it, that's naturally occurring clay, that really hard compacted earth that has not a lot of groggy things or big material in it. And that's the naturally occurring clay. That's just, it's just very small different types of materials and dirt, um and then when you talk about commercial clay, you're talking about things that have like kaolin. So these are all like minerals. They're all rocks and minerals.
Yeah.
So you're talking like a ball clay is like, a whole bunch of different sediments of this clay, this different type of clay from the earth, and kaolin and something called bentonite, which is another type of material that holds suspension. And then you're talking, so that's like what the body of your clay body is, right? Then you have your fluxes. Okay, so these are your feldspars, your nepheline cyanites, like things that really go into like very, very chemical backgrounds. But what those do is they take the clay body and they adjust to melting temperature. So however your clay is going to melt down.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then you have your like your filler things. Like you have your silica, which also helps with melting points and vitrification, meaning that the materials, when they start to melt, they become like this structure. It goes through very like chemical, like they're irreversible chemical changes in your clay that makes everything watertight. They start to melt and they become one, now another type of like one solid, right? And that's like a firing process.
Yeah. And that makes
So,
sense.
right. So then you have like your porcelains, right? That have, this kaolin that has no iron whatsoever. It's its purest form of a kaolin of this material, this sediment. And your porcelains also have, different types of melters, different types of things, but you get that beautiful, not, there's no grog, there's no sediment. It's like throwing cream cheese. And and because they don't have all that rock and sediment, when they shrink, in the kilns and they get fired, they really shrink. Like they're the highest shrinkage of the clay bodies, because there's nothing to kind of keep all their particles apart, like the grogs and the things that aren't going to melt. So they become this like really, really beautiful. Like if you ting a porcelain, it gives you that high ting 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 sound. It's like this gorgeous vitrified one uniform piece, and it also gives you, because it's white, it gives you like the most brilliant of the glazes, right?
Yeah.
And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. That was my mic is picking up my background noise. I think my partner turned the heater on, so
Because cold in there.
I know it's cold. But yeah, so
um
that's really really cool. I always thought that like for clay in the studio, it was kind of like so for pigments, a lot of natural earth pigments, there's this huge like industrial process of the earth, where they cut out like this chunk of the earth where they have like the most materials for that, for like certain types of minerals or different types of rocks, which then they turn into pigment. So I always thought that translated the same for like clay, where it's just like they find this big body of like clay where they do that. So it's really interesting to hear that that's not necessarily like that's not the case for industrial like
So
made.
it is though. So here's the
Oh,
thing.
okay.
So it's not like they find this big mine and then like add water and like go through a pug mill and now it's clay, right?
Yeah.
You have to get Custer feldspar from a mine. You have to get talc from a mine. You have to get kaolin, you have to get Gersley borate, you have to get all of every single mineral. So if you went into my studio, every single material I'm gonna say I have over 100 and something materials that I use to make clay, and all of them can be interchanged to make a clay body or a glaze, just different ratios,
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense to me. Yeah.
So for commercial clay, you go to your local studio and you get a bag of clay, right? These these clay manufacturers around here, we have like Standard Clay that's in Pittsburgh. These clay manufacturers will get this from this mine, this from this mine, this from this mine. They have a specific recipe, kind of like pancakes, right? And
Yeah.
then them all together in this giant mixer and they mix it around and then they pug it and de-air everything, and that's what you get. So it's not naturally occurring. The kaolin and the clay, like the ball clay, that's the naturally occurring material that you're finding. That's the stuff. But they have to add more things to make sure that that every clay body is exactly the same and does the exact same thing. So yes, you are correct in saying that clay is harvested that way, but only a certain amount of the percentage of commercial clays are made like that. Like they
Yeah.
do have that component. I'm gonna say it's kind of like a 50 to like 25% ratio of different materials in
No,
clay.
and that makes complete sense because when you think about like as you said like the recipe for pancakes, like these are all different ingredients and if you want to have a product that you are selling to artists, you want that product to be a stable product. You don't want it to change every time someone buys something. So it makes sense that they'd be like, yes, we have to harvest all of these ingredients or we have to source all these ingredients from different like manufacturers or different mines to then make the type of clay that we utilize.
So
Um,
now when you talk about the mines, right? There are a lot, and then you talk about the mines for all of these materials and then the small percentage of ceramic artists in our field, right? There
yeah,
are a lot of mines now that are actually either like they either dried up the mines or they're stopping and selling their materials to ceramic artists and to the actual like clay makers of this. They instead what they're doing is they're selling it to like the industrial places like Kohler, like the people that are making like porcelain toilets, or they're doing like the major clay things, tile makers and like, industrial things that have to do with like constructions and stuff, instead of saying, "Oh, we're going to sell our product to, people that are just doing clay glazes and stuff like that." So we're very very low, and a lot of our materials are like obsolete or just got jacked so high up. Before, when I first started 5 years ago, a bag of spodumene, which is like this, I think it's lithium carbonate, and I can't remember what the other component in spodumene is, but it went from $75 a bag to $1,007 a bag. So
oh
75 for a 50-pound bag. And then it went up to 250, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And then it went up to
yeah,
$1,007. And I haven't even checked it in the last 2 years because I can't afford a $50 bag of it. But then that's like, you know and so it's actually starting to do in our major melters, so it's actually starting to really affect our, and we have to start doing chemistry. What percentage of one material do I have to make to counteract what's happening to, so now we're actually starting to go into chemistry, and this is like a huge like nation worldwide thing that's happening to people. So it's been tough because a lot of the glazes are starting to act weird and we have to just counteract that. So
Yeah, like there's some materials for the glazes. I think in like other conversations that we've had where like you can't use that glaze anymore because the ingredients used to make that glaze just cost too much and
mhm.
it's just not worth it. So trying to find like a new way to make a similar color of that glaze to then like be able to utilize that still with different ingredients like that's man, that's crazy.
Yeah, it goes down to chemistry. I'm like, I failed I got made fun of by the instructor in college for chemistry. They're like, "Oh, the artist is here." I'm like, eh.
Oh, that's so mean. And now you're out here like doing
But
it on a regular
trauma. Yeah, now I'm
basis.
like now I'm doing chemistry. It's crazy.
Oh man. Okay, so for let's go into like the process of like say that this like pot that we have, the ceramic pot in its completed form. So we've talked about the clay, which is like the base. That's what makes it look like the shape that it is. Um to then be able to get it to the next process, we then talk about bisking. So like taking the clay in its raw form and turning it into something else. So what does that look like for the people who don't know what bisking is?
Okay, so we enter a class, we go, we make our the whole thing is you can start a class without ever knowing anything about the chemical makeup of clay. Like it's just here
Yeah.
it is. We went to the mines, we chemically made it. Here it is, and so we make something. And then what it has to do first before bisque is through its greenware stage. And greenware is when it's still unfired, but it goes from being very, very soft and malleable to something called leather hard. So I kind of equate it to cheese. So you got your like you got your smushy cheeses, your
Yeah.
mozzarellas, and then you start going to leather hard, which is like a mild cheddar, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more than like maybe like a sharp cheddar. And then you start to get a little bit harder and it goes into like parmesan hard, right?
Yeah.
So no longer malleable. I really can't put anything on it. It's just kind of like it's parmesan cheese. And then we get to bone dry, which I don't equate to a cheese at all. Like toasted parmesan. It's crispy. You can't really touch it or it's going to crack apart, right? So
Yeah.
that's when it's bone dry is when you want to put it into the kiln. And because it kind of evaporated all the water, when you touch it, it's warm to the touch, like not warm, like lukewarm, but like room temperature. It's not cold anymore.
Yeah. Because
That's
clay,
when we
it's
know that
just
most
clay
of
is really cold. Not like
clay is
super
cold,
cold, but
and
like yeah.
yeah, yeah. Clay is cold,
Like
and so
not
when
out of the
it's
fridge cold, but like when you're working with it, it's like, oh, this is
right,
like cool.
yeah. So when it finally dries to bone dry, it shouldn't have that coldness. It just should be room temperature. That's how you know that most like the wetness of the clay is over. Then we move to bisking it. So this is a first firing. And it really depends on what studio. You could either go to and we measure it's something called cones. We go into a whole thing about cones. But what we measure, it's kind of like when you go from cones, our temperatures go from like cone one, two, three, four, five, and it goes upwards into cone whatever. But when we talk about lower temperatures from 0, it goes O1, O2, O3, and we kind of use those O's as negatives. So we most places either go from O4 to O6, and O4 is higher than O6. So in between those, we do O5, which is in the middle, which is 1888 degrees. So you're kind of get Fahrenheit. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
what
love how
it's
that's like,
Celsius.
yeah.
I don't know what that is Celsius. But so that's the first firing, and what happens is that a lot of the moisture evaporates. It doesn't completely vitrify, so bisqueware is very, very porous. Usually, if people can't tell if it's been fired once, I'll tell them, and this is funny because people don't believe me, but I tell people just to touch your tongue to the bottom of your piece because if it sticks like it does like on a frozen pipe, like it kind of sticks there, it means that the moisture from your tongue is getting sucked into the porosity of your bisqueware, and that means that it has been fired once and that it's ready to accept glaze. So that's the bisqueware stage.
I was just gonna add, like, I remember you telling me that as like a tidbit for like if you stick your tongue on your bisqueware, like it'll stick. And I was like,
Yeah.
no way. And so I had like one of my ceramic palettes and I tried it and I was like, oh my god, it does. Like it's
Yeah, it
so
does. It
funny.
does.
It's so
It's the
fun.
porosity. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
And like from like a geology standpoint as well, that's very similar to like when you are measuring different types of rocks, like certain rocks. There's also a rock called um like vitreous rocks. And so that's the same way where it's like the rocks themselves are like super holy. That's the way that they like
oh,
describe
like
it.
pumice.
Yeah, yeah, like pumice. There's another one I can't think of off the top of my head, but that's very similar in that way. So it's really fun hearing it from like the art perspective of things and then also from like my geology background being like, "Oh yeah, like that makes sense to me." And like the
That's
heat that it has
why.
to be at to be there. Like it's so fun to see the like interdisciplinary like working its gears.
That's why I think I did so well in geology when I was in school. And
Yeah.
not even that though. I think that's why not that. I think I'm better at ceramics because I love geology. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? Because I could understand it. Geology. My mom was always like, I used to. I don't know if I told you this. I used to put rocks in my pocket, and I would just
Oh.
walk around with rocks in my pocket
I
all the
love that.
time. You know, because they were either cool or they were like really. There's actually an Instagram thing of like this guy being like, "Got rocks in my pocket," like. But yeah, that I've always been into rocks and geology and, I think that that really helps. I mean, that's my field basically. I'm kind of like mimicking that.
Yeah. No, that is really very similar because of all the ingredients that you're having to work with in order to build a specific clay, which is like that is geology. You're working with geology, you're working with chemistry, a lot of chemistry in that. So just like the science that goes into just art is fun, but even more so when it comes to ceramics because so much of it depends on our knowledge for like understanding what these materials are.
Yeah, absolutely. And what they do. That's
Yeah.
basically the whole point of how what I do. Like it's really how do you make a clay body? Take all these ingredients and if you want it to melt, let's say okay, so the cones. I want it to melt at cone 6. A lot of these materials melt at cone 10, which is a higher temperature. It's around 2,200, no, 2,387 degrees, I believe. I can fact check that, but um a lot of those materials melt at that temperature or start to begin to melt. What we have to do in order to either come up with cone 6 glazes or cone 6 clay bodies, we have to add melters. So, like, we have to add nepheline cyanide, we have to add silica, we have to add more things so that, and like a lot of borate, like Gersley borate or Gillespie borate, we have to add these things in order for this melting temperature to go down to be able to vitrify at a certain temperature.
Yeah, that's also oh my gosh, in my geology class that I took last semester, that was something that we discussed with regards to if there's a material that you want and it melts at a certain temperature and you want to bring it down, you have to mix it with something that melts at like at that temperature or a lower temperature because it heats it up and you're mixing those particles together. So it's oh, that's
Woo!
ooh, my
Ceramics! It's
brain.
so
I
cool.
know. It's like my brain's on fire. I'm like, yeah.
Rocks!
Let's go. Oh my gosh. Okay, so back on track though. After we have so we have the clay, we made it into the shape that we want. We put it into the kiln so it could fire at a low temperature. So then now we have a bisqueware and we've measured that at this point in time we can add certain glazes to it. So um let's talk about glazes.
Glazes. So, there are many, many glazes out there, like in certain categories. and the categories really depend on the ingredients. So, there are books out there that categorize all these glazes into blues, into reds, what chemical changes happen in different atmospheres, right? You have where we go to into a standard community center, and usually you'll see kilns that are the electric kilns. They're the round kilns, kind of like the standard kiln that everyone knows. And these are the electric kilns. They have an oxidation temperature, meaning that what they do is they just naturally come up to temperature. They fire it, and then they just turn off and they come back down to temperature, right? So this is like an oxidation temperature. It's kind of like an oven. Nothing, it's just open, and that's it. And so these glazes, again, a lot of these materials that go into these glazes are at a higher temperature, so we have to add certain things to make them lower. But there's also different types of pigments that go into different colors. So we have, so you would think, so chrome oxide is very green. You might know a thing or two about chrome
What?
oxide.
Crazy. I didn't literally just write things for my Viridian uh information for my watercolors so I could be like, yes, this is a chrome oxide. Let me tell you about this.
So what's cool about chrome oxide, so for your watercolors, are they green?
Yes. They
What's cool
are
about chrome oxide is in cone 6, they turn, like this really deep purple pink.
really.
Yeah, oh man. Oh, but I do have one. No, I don't. Just
Oh,
kidding. But it's
oh
very
no.
hold on, wait. It's very similar to this. I'm not gonna say that this is the exact glaze, but I'm gonna say that it's very similar to this. It's like
Really?
chrome oxide turns into like a purpley red type color.
Okay. I was like, yeah, that looks really kind of like purplish pink on screen.
Right. So I'm
Okay.
gonna
And that's due
say
to like
that
just heat
so it's
or
due to heat, but also other materials that change the chemical makeup of it.
that makes sense.
So I'm gonna say that, but then we also talk about copper carbonate. All right, so copper carbonate, it is very minty green. If you put this in a cone 10 atmosphere, so this is a higher temperature, and we cut the oxygen, meaning that we add natural gas into the equation to cut the oxygen out of it, it turns deep blood red
Oh,
because of the copper, right? But if we put it
yeah.
into cone 6, it's green.
That is
um,
so cool.
so like it's very, very cool. So there's different types of glazes out there, and they all have their different type of histories on where they come from and how we have them now here at different studios from all around the world, coming from like Iran, and how they kind of change. And that's a whole nother like history about where all these glazes are coming from. But so we have our bisqueware piece, and what we would do then is that we would take our bisqueware. Now I said it before that it's very porous, and we would pick our glaze. However, your studio has their glaze setups, and there are rules to glazes. There can be very, very runny ones, and there can be very, very stable ones. Some glazes like to mix with each other, and some glazes don't. So that all depends on what studio you're coming from, and what, how they kind of go with their glazes. Now, um, you take your bisque piece and you're going to there's different types of ways that they want you to resist the bottom, but because glaze is basically glass, um because we have a lot of silica and a lot of melters, same materials in all of these glazes, basically as same thing as clay, just different ratios on the melters, and which makes it melt over top. So there's because that of that, a lot of studios will require you to resist the bottoms of your pieces, because if you just put this on a shelf with the glaze on top of it, like if you put your piece on a shelf with the glaze on top of it, because it's glass, it's just going to fuse to the shelves.
Yeah.
You know.
And then you'll have to like either you have to I only know this because I was helping with like a local studio called Make ICT. They've got kilns and they need people that to like run the kilns, and it's a whole like a volunteer thing, but you have to be trained on it. And they
Yeah.
very briefly go over that as well. They're like, yeah, if you see that there's glaze on the bottom, like it's gonna stick to the shelf. Don't do that because we can't replace the shelves and all this other stuff. But if it does, like it like melts to it. It like you have to
Yeah, it
like
does.
try to chip it off to get it out of there because there's not a
Yeah.
way, not a good way at least to get it off of the shelf from there.
Right. So a lot of community studios will do something called kiln wash, which is like a 50-50 clay to like like a little bit of alumina hydrate. Um and and silica, but like not a lot of that. So it's one of those things that it basically creates this like I don't even know how to describe it. It's a very thick clay body that kind of just chips off. So when you do have something that melts onto your shelf, it kind of flakes off to protect your shelf. But sometimes it doesn't happen because some people like they put so much glaze on there it literally fuses to the actual kiln shelf itself, and so you don't want to do that. So you have to resist it. We usually eat wax because wax will burn off in the kiln around 400 degrees, and then it just helps you kind of like wipe off the bottom of your piece easier. And some people don't do that. Some people don't wax at all. I never used to be a waxer. I used to just like wipe off the bottom, but I have to be really diligent in wiping off the bottom of my piece. I have to make sure that I'm really, really wiping off the bottom of my piece. And then there's something called stilts, where they're little tight. There's like these like ceramic things that have little metal high wire metal pieces that stick up, and they can just kind of like rest on the bottom of your pot. And then if you wanted the bottom of your pot to be glazed, you can put them on these stilts, and then when they come off, they'll leave little marks, but you can Dremel them off and wet sand them into really nice sheen, and that's kind of how you would do the bottom of a pot if you'd want that.
Yeah, yeah. So there's definitely times where like if you go to um I guess like even your local general store, I guess, where you can see like these different mugs. There's some mugs where if you look at the bottom, it's got like that kind of stone feel to it, which is
Mhm.
that it either had wax on the bottom or they removed the glaze from that, or there are some like vases that you can look at where they've got the glaze on the bottom. So they very likely use the stilts for that.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's it's just like honestly, you can really do a lot with ceramics as long as you just know the rules when it comes to like. And that's a whole learning thing, you know, you're gonna make mistakes for sure. The reason why I know so much about all these things that happen in the kilns because I've done them before, you
Yeah.
know.
I'd say when it comes to there's a lot of just art that when you get into it, it is about making mistakes and getting better from it and learning from
Oh
those
yeah, for
mistakes that
sure.
you make.
So luster firing is something that so you have like okay, so you have your glaze fire or you have your bisque firing, your first firing, and you have your glaze firing. And then you can fire a whole bunch of other times over top just for an aesthetic, right? And
Yeah.
it's actually at a lower temperature than it was glaze fire because now we're adding like enameling, we're adding gold luster, which it could be like real gold, golds, coppers, rose gold, stuff like that. And we have something called decal firing, which you can put images onto. So if you've ever seen those images that are on like mugs or anything like that, this is decal firing, meaning that it's like a type of like translucent or it's like a type of paper that you would use. The one that I use is an iron base, so we need like I think it's a laser jet printer that we need, and we have certain type of paper, so I could do whatever image that I want as long as it's very high contrast. Put it through this paper, put it on my piece, fire it at a very low temperature, basically bisque firing again, just so that the glaze melts into the image melts into the glaze.
Yeah.
And so then these are like your third firing. So after your bisque and after your glaze, you go into a luster firing or stuff like that that the materials melt at a different temperature, uh lower.
I've heard of the decal ones, and I actually took like a very brief. It was meant to be a class, but I ended up being the only student there. And it was just so like oh gosh, it was a very relaxed class. So he didn't get too in detail on why it necessarily worked. So it's nice hearing why it worked when you bring up that it's like an iron base. Um,
Is that what you did? Is that what you did, iron-based decals? And they came out like
yeah,
sepia?
they did. Yeah, they came out like sepia, but we did that on a already bisqued. Like we did it on the, like the bisqued. Oh my gosh.
Bisque piece. Bisqueware?
Yes, yeah, we did it on the bisqueware, and then he put it in, which so
Wait, he put it on bisqueware over glaze or just the bisque piece?
just the bisque piece. There was no glaze that we
Is
added.
it was it under glaze? Was it on rice paper instead of actual print like the printer?
It may have been on rice paper. It was like it was on what looked like paper, and then you put it on the
And did you
bisque piece, and then
actually
we added like
water?
yeah.
Different. Different.
Okay,
So
well
this
there it is.
yes. I'm so stoked that you said that. Actually, of course, I just cleared out my whole inventory.
Isn't that how it
Transfers
works? Yeah.
are screen printed underglaze.
Okay.
So yeah, so transferred they put it on like something rice paper or a lot of my cups that had all that graffiti stuff on it before, that's
Yeah.
all transfer. So it's kind of like you put them on like a temporary tattoo. And you can make your own, which is really cool with like newspaper and underglaze pens and stuff, like these like
Yeah.
underglaze like squeezy bottles, and then you just let them dry, and then you can just like put them on your piece and do the same thing, and then they lift off and they kind of transfer that image. Decals, and that's before bisque. That's either you can do
Okay.
it on greenware. You can do it on greenware that actually makes it nice and smooth instead of kind of like rough. And then you can do it on bisqueware. And then decals are something different that are printed on a different type of paper, and they are then melted into your glaze after your glaze.
Okay. Okay. So completely different process. Similar but different process.
Similar but different, but you are not, it is so common to get all of those mixed up. Even my advanced students get them mixed up, and I just go, I like look at them and I like finger gun them, and they're like, never mind, I meant decals, you know.
You're like, I'm waiting for you to say it.
You got it, you got it. So it's one of those definitely common mistake.
Okay, that is good to know. I'm happy that we went over that because I didn't realize that those were two different things. Hi, friend. We're actually going to take a break from this. This episode turned out to be much longer than I had initially anticipated. So we'll be splitting this into two parts. This was the end of the first part. Please continue on to the second part, which will be released later on this month. So thank you so much. I can't wait to hear what you guys' thoughts are on this. And please feel free to join the Discord, follow the YouTube, follow Twitch. You guys know the drill. And yeah, we'll catch you later. Okay, bye, friends.